Seated, everyone. If you want to look in the text itself, you can go to 468. I think that sometimes that which Judaism seeks to instill in us in an aspirational way gets coded deep in our souls and essence, and at the same time we sometimes stray so far from that ideal that we need to reorient ourselves to who we are meant to be. The essence of our identity is that we were slaves in Egypt. And there's a danger in that because you can internalize a victim mentality. There's also a dignity in that because you could internalize a bunch of other things. So the question I want to put out to you is, what does it mean to remember that we were slaves in Egypt? We're going to explore that. I'm going to come around and hear people's points of view about it. And you heard me share a longer introduction to the prayer for Israel. Part of me wondered if I needed to totally just focus on the pain that people have been feeling. But I actually think that this lesson weaves in powerfully to what's going on now. And a piece that struck me as I was preparing this week, kind of before things exploded, was in Daniel Gordis's column, Israel from Inside. He's worth reading. He brought a man named Guy Darmon. And Guy Darmon is a French immigrant who started one of the largest nonprofits in Israel that I think most of us here don't know about. It's called La Tête. And La Tête is a network that distributes food to those who are suffering from food insecurity. The number he gave of people who are suffering from food insecurity in Israel was shocking to me. He said over 2,750,000 people in Israel live with food insecurity. That's over a quarter of the population. 1,240,000 children living in poverty. And on a certain level, we're also proud of Israel as startup nation. And we need to understand that alongside startup nation, he writes, we're also living in soup kitchen nation. And that when you have internalized an ethic of caring for those in need, that becomes intolerable. And the interesting thing about Guy is that he does his work certainly to alleviate hunger. And the other piece that interested me was how many Holocaust survivors the organization serves. It gives monthly assistance to almost 100,000 people, 1,450 Holocaust survivors. They distribute 22,000 tons of food every year. And what he wants to do is use this as a way to deepen a sense of this is who we need to be as a society and a culture. And I would suggest that the skewing difference between the very affluent and those who are living with food insecurity is a parallel phenomena here in America and here in Silicon Valley. So I'm going to weave back around to it, but let's start simply with the premise of let's look at the verse. So Exodus chapter 22, verse 20. Ger lo toneh, do not wrong the stranger. Lo tilchatzenu ki gerim heyitem be'eretz b'Mitzrayim. Don't oppress, pressure. You were strangers in the land of Egypt. that sense of having been a stranger, that's meant to code inside of us. And if it's not coding, we're doing something wrong. Look at the next line. You shall not ill-treat the widow or the orphan. If you do mistreat them, I'll heed their outcry as soon as they cry out to me. Jewish theology that is compelling to me is a theology that says God listens to the outcries of those who are vulnerable and in need, who cry out. And it is our obligation to respond. My anger shall blaze forth. I'll put you to the sword if your own wives shall become widows and your children orphans. Things come around in deep ways. When you go to the bottom of Eitz Chaim, one of the comments is a comment that I hope you've heard before. The decency of a society is measured by how it cares for its least powerful members. And certainly when I think of the hostages, I think of that line. Are we caring for these people who are utterly, utterly powerless? When you're a ger, when you're a stranger, when you're a resident alien who's maybe come to Israel to work, to get some income, you don't have local family to fall back on, to care for your basic needs. And so that deep sense of beware of the person who is different, who's other. Your job is to care for them. Now go to 23, verse 9. It's on page number 472. You shall not oppress the stranger. This one, it takes it in a different direction. You know the feelings of the stranger. And as I pointed out when I introduced this, it's stronger than that English translation. Yidatem et nefesh hager. You know the soul of the stranger. Why? Having yourselves been strangers in the land of Egypt. I believe that there may be no more important, powerful, or compelling internal state than to say, I was a stranger. And to really feel it, that's hard to feel amidst the comfort and privilege that all of us have. It's hard to feel when we may not know the stories that some of you told about your parents who came from times of poverty. Certainly that's a piece of my parents' story. There's this, we're Jews, we argue. Rabbi Eliezer says this occurs 36 times in the Torah. No, another one says it's 46 times. Here's the bottom line. It occurs enough that we need to internalize it. So now I want you to look at Nachmanides, the Ramban. The Ramban says, what's the implication of having been strangers? He says, the correct interpretation to me is that God is saying, don't wrong a stranger or oppress him, thinking as you might that none can deliver him out of your hand. For you know that you were strangers in the land of Egypt, and I saw the oppression with which the Egyptians oppressed you. So that's an interesting interpretation because it's political. And the politics of this is know that there's going to be some kind of redemption and don't think you can get away with it. Because I think so often we do. So Nachmanides gives a political interpretation, and all of these lead us to say, who's the ger now? Who do we need to be acting on behalf of as a result of the fact that we had a similar experience? And then I've always interpreted it by his second interpretation. You know what it feels like to be a stranger because you were strangers. That is to say, every stranger feels depressed, is always sighing and crying. Put yourself in the place of that person who's marginalized, that person who is the other, and ask yourself, what is their experience so that you can be different, understand the psychological vulnerability of the stranger. They feel alone. And God is sensitive to that. There's an emotional element to this second one. And this says God cares. So I brought you a few modern thinkers. One is Shai Held. He says the Torah could have responded much differently to the experience of oppression in Egypt. It could have said, since you were tyrannized and exploited, nobody did anything to help you, you don't owe anything to anyone. By the way, that's often how people respond to a difficult situation that they went through. How dare anyone ask anything of you? It chooses the opposite. Since you were exploited and oppressed, never be among the exploiters and degraders. Remember what it feels like to be a stranger. Empathy must animate and intensify your commitment to the dignity and well-being of the weak and vulnerable, and God holds you accountable. This is what drives me in terms of my Judaism. And how do you instill this? You have it at your holidays. This is what Passover is meant to be. How do you instill it? It's part of your daily prayers. How do you instill it? You do acts that connect you with people who are vulnerable, who need help, and in so doing, it becomes who you are. To be a Jew is to be a stranger. By the way, think of all the strangers. Abraham was a stranger. He left his home. Moses was a stranger. He got exiled to Midian. The Israelites were strangers. This is a piece of our experience. To be a Jew is to be a stranger. Of course, we're going to bring you Rabbi Sachs. Compassion begins with empathy. The greatest crimes of humanity have been committed against the stranger, the outsider, the one not like us. Implicit in the command to care for the stranger is the radical idea that we had to experience exile and slavery before we could enter the promised land and build our own society and state. Might history, might memory be an antidote to indifference? Might it build within us compassion? Sarah Hurwitz wrote a great book called Here All Along. God seems to understand that it's easy for us to treat powerful people as if they're in the divine image. The same is true of people we know and love. But those who are powerless, helpless, they aren't part of the family or community, not so much. What's unusual about this commandment is that the concern is not just for vulnerable Israelites, for vulnerable non-Israelites. So I want to ask you, what do you do with not the commandment? Tell me about that too. How do you live this? How do you instill it? What does it mean that we were strangers? Do you interpret it with number one explanation of Nachmanides? You know, things shift politically, be aware of that. Number two, therefore have empathy and compassion. What do you do with these lines? Please.
We have always been strangers. We were strangers in Europe. We were strangers in Babylon. I have always felt a bit like a stranger, even in this country, especially in my childhood and now when there's been such an uprising in anti-Semitism. I've always had the feeling that I was somewhat in exile. And I feel such a deep connection to all of the Jews who always felt like strangers. And that it can be uprooted, your sense of comfort can be uprooted so easily.
And what else does it take you to that place of empathy for others who are strangers?
Yes, total empathy. Okay. And I feel so helpless now. I'm trying to write letters. I'm trying to be active. There's such cruelty towards the stranger now.
So a piece of the reason I wanted to bring this teaching today is because it's feeling so hard to live. Like when it's such a part of you and you're feeling a little powerless, then that sense of what do I do with this sits with you in a deeper way. What else do you do with this?
Whoops, that's really loud. So I'm working with the schools a lot, and as soon as I see the oppressor-oppressed language, my immediate reaction is to be on guard because of what's going on with ethnic studies, students reading Ibram X. Kendi in 6th grade and in every grade. And I think what's missing for me, because I personally feeling the victim versus the shame of being an oppressor, what's missing in most contexts that's not missing here is that we're doing it in light of a worship for God.
Good.
So the oppressor is not the God that both the oppressor and the oppressed need to worship governs all. And without that framework, it falls apart into people fighting over who's more oppressed, the shame of the oppressor, but you're losing sight of the larger picture that this is all part of our religion.
Good. And I actually want to suggest that possibly as we explore what does it mean to be oppressed, it gives small area for us to be in true dialogue rather than in oppositional dialogue.
Yes, for me, we can be a stranger within ourselves.
Good.
And for me, it's like when I feel I have it made, I don't have it made. And I have to realize that I'm in this world to provide and help others as well as myself.
So when you can view yourself as one who lives out of empathy, it actually reconnects you to feel a little less of a stranger. Fish kindness, come on. I'll get you in a second.
I think maybe 10 years ago, kind of just before Christmas, we were driving, and not this one of the other kids was asking, why can't we get a Christmas tree and just be like everybody else? And I said, that's exactly the point, that you learn to feel it's okay to be different, strange. And when you embrace and you look at actually some of the important signs in Judaism, it's about being different. Do something different on the door, do something different in your clothing. But when you are, it enforces you to realize I'm a minority and I'm different. And when you embrace being a minority and different, it forces you to think on, okay, how do I treat any minority, any difference within the society? And that's why it's okay to feel different is so important.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Sarah Ann.
Well, in these times, obviously we need to have empathy and understanding, but I did a paper one Shavuot about the stranger.
Yeah.
And one of the things that makes it easier for me, I don't know if it works for anyone else, is that the Torah teaches us there's two kinds of strangers. There's the ger, who is the peaceful stranger who lives among us,
Right.
who we must treat with empathy and kindness. But the Torah also has the nachar, the violent stranger with whom we cannot live, and which the Torah tells us we do not have to embrace, we do not have to accept.
Right.
We don't have to be a victim because we embrace the stranger that comes to us with violence, the Amalekites and other groups that God says we do not take from or mingle with. And so I think part of what has been painful and important today is that difference between the ger and the nachar. We need to embrace the stranger. We don't need to embrace the anti-Semite,
Good.
even though they are different.
Sure. Yes, be careful how you're going to apply this. I think that's a really important point.
So much of Torah is written in a first person singular or third person. But really, there is a systemic character to how a society estranges a certain people. and estranges them from their rights that they should have, or that they should know that they should have, as I shared in Torah study. I'm working on something in terms of access to justice. And so emancipating those people who have been estranged from their knowledge of the rights that they have, or that they should think that they have, is something that needs a collective intelligence to do that, as opposed to an individual. Yes, there is an individual stranger, and yes, they deserve help, but there's a whole cohort of those who have been made to be estranged and kept away.
You know, I have brought in the past that in other places in Torah, it doesn't just say don't mistreat, it says love the stranger. And if you're going to love the stranger, you have to figure out systemically how to allow them to prosper within your society and culture. One of the things I want to think about is how to internalize this in a deep way. And it's why the story of this organization, Latet, was so interesting to me. Guy Darmon, he talks about one of the things he wants to try to do in Israel is to bring people together because we're splitting apart so deeply. And he says that volunteering networks are one way to do this. I think it's true. I know that when I go and I help out with people at Second Harvest, I'm not asking what their politics were or who they voted for. We just have a shared care for those who are in need. We have a long way to go. We have a long way to go. One, to start to address poverty. It's such a systemic issue. Those who are living with terrible vulnerability. But I'm wondering if in addressing this issue we can do, as Darmon said, which is create a shift in how society and community views itself. Listen to what he says. We say we have to educate the Israeli society around all values, values of solidarity, of mutual responsibility, of universal values. We did a lot to push this forward within our organization, and among them, we created a youth movement. We've got 1,800 teenagers all over the country meeting twice a week. And what we're doing one thing, micro-social projects. We're generating a future social leadership of the country. Those teenagers are promoting the values of mutual solidarity. When we talk about the different civilian command centers for social issues, in that way, it's a victory of the values we've been promoting for the last 25 years. I want us to be partners in promoting the value of caring for those who are vulnerable here and in Israel. It's our sacred task. It's who we're called to be. So I want to wish everybody Shabbat Shalom. I'm going to go do this next door. We'll see what they come up with. Brian will lead us in the Musaf service, and we'll see each other at Kiddush. We are Chatzi Kaddish, page 184. Thanks, Brian. Yesher Koach in advance.
Thank you. Page 184. Yitkadal v'yitkara shemei Rabba. V'yamal yivrach yirtei v'yamlech malchutei. B'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayedecho Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'yimaru. Amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mavorach. V'yolam elomei amaya. Yitbarach. Yitbarach. V'yishtabach. V'yipar. V'yitramam. V'yitnasei. V'yitadar. V'yitaleh. V'yitalal. Shmei l'kudisha. B'richu. Le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechedmata. Damiran v'yoma v'yimaru. Amen. Please turn to page 185 and rise to the Amida, and we'll sing the first couple of pages together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor, V'Hanara, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chastei Avot, V'Mevi Goel Livnei V'Nehem, Laman Shemo V'Yahava, Melech Ozer Foked Moshiach Umagen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Foked Sarah, Atah Gibor Li'olam Adonai, Mechayei Metim, Atah Rav L'Hoshia, Mashiv HaRuach, Morid HaGashem, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechayei Metim Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim V'Rofei Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Baal Gevurot, Umidom Elach, Melech Meimit Umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman Atah L'Achayot Meitim, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mechayeh HaMeitim. Naritzecha v'nakdishecha kisot siach sarfei kodesh hamakdishim shimcha b'kodesh kakatuv ayad neviecha V'kara ze el ze v'yamar, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, Malach ha'aretz kivodo. Kivodo male male olam aye mekam kivodo. Kivodo male male olam aye mekam kivodo. Kivodo male male olam mishar tav shoalim shoalim zelaze aye mekam kivodo. Mishar tav shoalim shoalim zelaze aye mekam kivodo. Lumatam Baruch Yomeru, Baruch Kavod Adonai, Nimkomo. Nimkomo hu yifen berachamim, v'yachonam, Ham Yachadim Shemo, Erev Avoker B'chol Yom Tamid, Pamayim B'Yava, Erev Avoker B'chol Yom Tamid, Pamayim B'Yava, Shema Omrim, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hu Eloheinu, Hu Avinu, Hu Malkeinu, Hu Moshienu, V'hu Yashmienu b'rachamav, Shenid Le'enei Kol Chai, Liot lachem le'Elohim, Ani Adonai Elohechem, Udivrei kashecha katuv le'mor, Yimloch Adonai le'olam, Elohayich Tzion ledor vador. Hallelujah. Ledor vador. Ledor vador. Ledor vador nagid God lecha. Ledor vador. Ledor vador. Ledor vador nagid God lecha. Ulenetzach nitzachim kiddushach decha nakdish. Kiddushach decha nakdish. V'shivchach Eloheinu mipinu lo yamush li'olam va'ed. Ledor vador. Ledor vador. Ledor vador nagid God lecha. Ledor vador. Ledor vador. Ledor vador nagid God lecha. Ki el melech gadol, gadol v'kadosh, gadol v'kadosh ata. Yai da 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 da, yai da 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 da, yai da da yai da 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 da. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. We continue silently for the rest of the Amida. We turn for the full Kaddish, Kaddish Shalem at page 203. Yikadal v'kadash shemei rabah, b'yamad yivrach yurtei, v'mlech achutei, b'chayechon v'mehon chadacho be'Yisrael, b'agalav izman kari v'yimaru, v'in yehei shmei rabah mavorach, le'olam elomei amaya yitbarach, Yitbarach v'ishtabach v'yitpar v'yitron v'yinaseh v'yidar v'yitala v'yitala shmei kudusha v'yechu le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata damiram v'yama v'yimaru tekabel tzoloton uvuton dechol be'Yisrael kadamon di v'shamaya v'yimaru Yehi Shlomo Rabba min Shemai v'chaim aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'yimaru Oseh Shalom Birmav, Yeseh Shalom, Aleinu v'yakol Yisrael, v'yakol Yishvei Tevel, v'imeru. Amen. Page 204, Ein Keloheinu. Ein Keloheinu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kimalkeinu, Ein Kamoshienu, Micheloheinu, Michadonenu, Mi Chimalkeinu, Mi Chamoshienu, No del Eloheinu, No del Adonenu, No del Malkeinu, No del Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu, Atahu Shetiru, Avotenu, Lefanecha, Eketoret Hasamim. Please rise for Yalenu, page 205, as the ark is open. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, arkeinu l'al yoser b'reshit, shalom asanu b'gayei haratzot, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shalom samkachinu kahem, v'gor aleinu k'chol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, u'mishachagim u'odim, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נתן שמיים ויוצר הארץ, ומשה יקרא בשמיים ממעל, ושכינה תזור, ושכינה תזור, בגבי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אמת דרכנו, אפס זולתו, תקעתו בתורתו, וידעת היום, ידעת היום, השבתך אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים, בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת עינו. כי המלכות שלכי כל ימי עד תמות לכבוד, הכתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר, היה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו Can be seated. We'll turn to page 207 for Mourner's Kaddish, and we'll remember those with yahrzeits today. We remember Tony Benowitz, Joseph Browdy, Arnold Chaliff, Sarah Dalal, Donald Feinstein, Richard Fishback, Susan Goldberg, Aaron Goldman, Philip Greenberg, Zelly Gruber, Robert Havelka, Dean Hoffman, Hope Howard, Ruth Jones, Ruth Kalisher, Fred Melman,
Max Miller, Adeline Pollock, Saul Rosenbaum, Sally Rubin, Manny Schneck, Ruth Shapiro, Carl Smilovitz, Rick Taylor, Louis Wheel. We remember the lives of the hostages. Been a tough week. The Bibas family and all the others. Mourners and those observing your type, please rise and join us in Kaddish on 207. Yikadal v'yikadash shemei rabbah be'oma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayedecho be'Yisrael v'galau v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam lo me'omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpahar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yithalal shemei dekudusha barichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata damiran be'oma v'yimru amen. Yehi shlama rabbah min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mrumav hu yaseh shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol Yoshvei Tevel v'imru. Amen. B'shakach. B'shakach. So b'shakach to Brian for leading us. Musaf. B'shakach to our Torah readers, Daphna and Sarah Ann, Rana. B'shakach. Shoshana. And, if I didn't say it already, Rana. Brian, thank you. Thank you to everybody for being here. I do not have announcements in front of me. I know that we have something going on next Sunday. I believe it's vis-a-vis Stanford. And then in 2 weeks, on the 9th, is the Purim Carnival, which I guarantee is going to be fun. You have my personal word on it. And if you don't have fun, then you have to come and tell the rabbi. It's gonna be great. And then following week is the Megillah reading. And if you want to read Megillah, you still can. You can still find your verse or 15. Absolutely. And I'm happy to give up of my bounty of verses. So anyway, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We are going to go to Kiddush in a moment after we have Adon Olam. And Dottie's prepared a really nice lunch as usual. So page 211, Brian, bring us home.
Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra Le'et Nasa B'chefso Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra V'yacharei Kichlot HaKol Levado Yimloch Nora V'hu Haya V'hu Hoveh V'hu Yeh B'tifara V'hu Echad V'yein Sheni L'hamshilo L'hachbira B'li Reshit B'li Tachlit V'lo Ha'oz V'ha'misra V'hu Eli V'chai Goali V'tzor Chevli B'yetzara V'hu Nisi Umanosli Menat Kosi B'yom Ekra B'yado Avkid Ruchi B'yeti Shan B'yahira V'imruchi Giviyati Adonai li v'lo ira.
Let's stand for Kiddush Yishakach, Brian. Okay, Baruch Hanai Yom Shabbat Ve'kacheu Savri Chavirai.
L'chaim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri agafen.
And Moitzi.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Amen.
Amen.
Shabbat Shalom. B'tei Avon. Shkach. Nice to see you.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
We're happy to be back. We were in frigid Philly for the week. Got back yesterday.
Oh, it's funny because Shira was there. Yeah, she had a week off this week, so she went with a couple of friends who live there. Oh. So she hung out in Philly and then just in Jersey for half a week with cousins. And then she on her way back to Maine. So it's like frigid Philly, frigid Jersey, Maine. New level. You know? It made me